do some paints make a beautiful smooth wash and why some of those don't. We're going to talk about that. It's all about granulation and it has a mind of its own. Hi, I'm Michelle Manriquez from Drop That Brush. I want to help people who are non-artists become artists. Please like, subscribe, and ring that bell. When I got into watercolor, I didn't always understand why certain pigments would do strange things. And I felt like I was not in control. And so for a long time, I used only things that were not granulating. So I want to talk to you about it because now I use it all the time and it's wonderful. But it was a little scary, and I think that happens to a lot of people. Some people love granulating pigments. Some people are like, oh my God, I have no control, forget it. Watercolor paint consists of ground up something, rocks, something synthetic, and then mixed with some kind of a binding material, and that's how we have paint. Binding materials can be things like gum arabic, they can be honey, there are synthetic binding materials. When I grind watercolor pigment, it will be a very, very fine grind, and we'll get something like Phthalo blue, where it's a very soft, clean wash. When I have coffee and they grind it really fine so that we can have a, what's it called? A shot at Starbucks, it's really fine grind, and that allows us to have a very smooth movement. Some of the pigments, they simply don't grind very well. Your regular coffee pot and you've got the grind and there's some little, some small, different sizes. Well, that's what basically happens is there are small pieces of metal that do not grind properly. And when they don't grind, what happens is that the metal goes into the paper and kind of sits there. It totally separates from the water, the painting medium, and it just goes kind of plops down. That's called granulation. Granulation is also you can call it sedimentary. Cold press and rough have all kinds of little valleys where it's just going in and out, and of course, obviously rough even more. So that really allows that particular pigment to really drop down and you can see it. Whereas if you use hot press, there is always going to be some granulation, but not as much because it doesn't have, so it's really flat surface. It only shows what really is based on the paint, not necessarily the valleys. You should know that if you are using student grade paper or paint, you really won't get granulation. It's something, it just doesn't work well with that. There are really good granulating colors in purple and blue. There's very few granulating colors in yellows and reds. So some things that you want to think about to make more granulation. Because sometimes you paint, I wanted a granulation and it didn't happen. So let me tell you what the problem is. I almost always tilt my board, which means paint goes quickly across the surface. When that happens, you don't have good granulation. Because I was thinking about why is it my paintings don't have a lot of granulation? And it really is because it goes through quickly. It has to have a chance to settle there and go separate. So if it just goes whoop, right through the board, it doesn't work so good. So one of the things you want to do is keep it more flat if you're wanting to do granulation. If you put your paper dry it to wet, So you're just putting on dry paper, it doesn't granulate as much. If you add water into that, then you'll get more granulation. You can charge into paint, we'll talk about that. And movement will also make it more granulate. Oh, also, backgrounds make it much worse. Again, this is why, when we're beginning, okay? So we're at the beginning and we don't like backgrounds. Now I like backgrounds, but you know, whatever. But backgrounds really make it. And because we're trying not to get the background, no background here, baby. So this makes the sedimentary effect, it's much more exaggerated if you have a background, which again, I do like it now, but I didn't at the beginning. Why would you use this kind of pigment? Well, if you're wanting it to stay put, it doesn't move as much. So like when we have yellow and yellow shoves out, woo, and you're like, oh my. This, at least you put it in there and it pretty much doesn't move, which helps. That makes your life easier. So it's nice for a shadow area. Another thing is we can actually throw that into a non-transparent wash, and that gives you interesting effects. So we're gonna look at that today as we are doing our demo. So here we go. My desk is actually at a tipped angle. So in order to make this reasonably flat, I have to use a towel. Daniel Smith colors frequently are sedimentary or granulating. And they're really pretty. You can actually see him doing it on, you don't even have to put it on the paper. You'll know if you just leave it there that something is granulating, this granulation here. These two don't have granulation. So just so that we're all on the same page is a non-granulating. Now this is hot press. I did both hot and cold press because I really want you to be able to see it both, because it does make a difference in how it looks, and it sits there totally different. That's Phthalo blue. Like I said, this one you can see it as it's going. It does weird stuff immediately. Looks about the same, right? Now if I add a little water. Now, one thing about using granulated when hot press paper, you know how much it really granulates and doesn't, because it really can't move. So you're really gonna get a true look. This at least kind of sets in the hole, so you'll see it. So let me show you a regular yellow. So that's a non-staining, is gold ochre. Now I'm gonna put a little water on it first because it makes it move better. And you can charge it. But the actual little movement makes it do more. This one, I'm not even gonna put anything on. I'm just going to see what it does and let it do its thing. The other one that's beautiful, Aussie Gold. Now, Daniel Smith has regular purple, and then they have purple that is actually does granulation, which I have. Imperial Purple, and you can see, oh yeah. The other one that I think is really lovely, let me see, I'm curious to see what it does. I've never seen it, what happens in rows of ultramarine. Now this is the neatest color ever. Okay, doesn't look very impressive there, but boy, it separates into this green, and it's really just strange and exciting things. And I'm not sure why, but it does. It's just an amazing color. I'm gonna move that a little bit. I want that one to do what it's supposed to do. And you can load it in. See right here, I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna try to pull it up, but you can really see where these little pigments are just sitting there. Ooh, you can see, boy, you can really see it there. That is really strong. And it has a texture. We're looking at textures. If you take this, so that has absolutely no texture. And if I do a dazzle, let's say of this, just drop it in. You see, it doesn't really move. It just kind of sits there and it makes this little puddle, but it doesn't shove. Watch what happens if I take this next to it and it literally will just shove in. That will just sit there. And so it's dependent upon what you're looking for. This is a yellow, non-transparent, non-granulating, and it shoves everything out. When I put that in, it just sits there. So it depends upon what you're looking for, because obviously they're both interesting effects. Say I did that. Isn't that beautiful? And what if I used Moonshadow? Moonshadow is the coolest color. I'm not sure why. Gotta check this out. This is a really cool color. So I'm gonna put Moonshadow here, and I'm just gonna allow it to kind of do its thing. Moonshadow and Lunar Blue are also, and one's more on the purpley side, and the other one is more on the blue side, Lunar Blue. I'm gonna see what they do. I'm curious. So we're gonna let that dry and look at it. If you put a little bit more and charge it in, make sure I got the right one. Let's see, that's this guy. I wanna try this over here too, because I'm curious. One side, we're gonna do the same thing I just did, which is one side, Lunar Blue, the other side is Moonshadow. Let's do this. I'm trying to do the same thing so I get you the, what I use? I use that, okay. Yep, doesn't really move, does it? Now I want you to see if you mix it, what happens. And you see how it totally like, I'm here and this guy just stuck. Look at that, that's amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead because I want things to move. I'm gonna put some water here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to non-granulating color, which is coral, versus, let's use ultramarine, which I really love anyway. You can see the ultramarine just kind of stopped. It didn't do anything. See, that's one thing about it is if you don't want it, if you want it to say you have a fold or something, that forces it to not move around, which is nice. You could really use that sometimes. Let's look at Phthalo. Get some water. Aussie Gold. Now you can see I'm having to actually move it. It doesn't want to move. It's like it's not as movement. So I'm actually moving it to be able to get, but I want to see what it looks like, what it will do. And then I think I'm going to take a little bit more and just really juice it up. Let me tip it a little bit. Let's see what kind of movement we get with that, because I'm curious. That is, look at how pretty that is. Well, just because I did that, we should try on the other side too, right? So let me grab and this. See how pretty that is? That really is pretty. It's ultramarine blue with Moonshadow. Obviously, I enjoy myself. It's fun. You know, this should be fun. You don't have to make it perfect. I want to see what it looks like when I mix it up. So this is what happens when we mix a non-granulating color. Basically, it granulates a little bit. How fun is that? And I would say that if you want to do granulated colors, hot press doesn't make it do it very well. It does it beautifully on, well, what do you think? Do you see the difference? Do you understand where it just doesn't move? And so if we want something to not move, so say we have an area, and you can see the difference between the hot press to the cold press. And you can really see it here versus here, between the yellow and the Lunar Blue versus the Moon Gold. So if you have any questions, let me know, and tell me your favorite granulating pigment. Comment below. Granulating pigments are so much fun. You can use them in landscapes, walls, doors, people, particularly old people. There's granulation all over the place there. And I think that it gives you an excitement that you couldn't get anywhere else. It's one of the reasons why I like watercolor, because it gives me a surprise. I used to think, when you're beginning, you're thinking, okay, I just want it to get in lines. Could I please make it go in lines? But with time, you realize how fun it is to do weird things. Or, well, at least for me, I think it's really fun. So enjoy yourself. Check out these colors. If you don't want to use them, that's okay. Understand that it's there and you can play with it later, but it certainly is something to think about and to enjoy. So you know what? When you're playing with your brush, to be honest, granulating pigments actually like to be stroked and played. So for this one, don't always drop your brush. Play with it a little bit and you'll get fun little things happen. But don't play too much, just a little bit, and then get out of there. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell. You know what? You have a wonderful day, and take care out there, okay?